For these questions, we're tasked with solving for a variable, as usual, and you'll notice that we have a few, but our typical strategy isn't going to work for these, and we'll see why here. We notice that we have an x here and an x there. Normally, we would put those two terms together, but we can't because these are not like terms. This has an x, but this one has an additional variable with the z. Likewise, here we have an x and we have an x, but we have a p right here, which is going to keep us from being able to combine those like terms. So we have to develop a new tool. And today, we're going to start talking about factoring. This tool will allow us to be able to solve those types of questions. So we need to build a little bit of background here. We're going to do the distributive property and see how that's related to factoring. So we've done this before where we distribute the x into the parentheses here. X times 2y would be 2xy, and x times -4 would be -4x. Now over here, you'll notice that we start with 2xy minus 4x. Factoring is simply the reverse of the distributive property. So if I wanted to, I can take this x and I can move it back outside parentheses so that I get x. What's left here is 2y, and what's left here is the -4. And so we're kind of going back and forth in a circle here between the two. So the distributive property and factoring are important. Now, the reason why we do this is so that we can get those variables together in a single location where we weren't able to before because they were not like terms. Let's practice a couple more. P times x is px. P times 6y is positive 6py. Over here we have px plus 6py. When we factor out the p, we end up with p. What's left here is x. And what's left here is 6y, so plus 6y. So you'll notice we went back to where we started right there. X times 2 here is 2x. X times 6z is positive 6xz. Over here we get 2x plus 6xz. When I factor out the x, take that outside of the parentheses, we get x times 2 plus 6z. Okay, now, when we go back to our last question, you'll notice that we start with this. So let's factor and see how that allows us to solve these two questions that we were not able to solve before. So we have this expression that we just barely factored. So we're going to take that x outside of parentheses here. We get x. What's left here is the 2. And what's left here is 6z. And now we can use some of our old skills. I want to review something from a couple of sections ago, though. When we are undoing multiplication, let's take this simple example here. 3x equals 12. This is multiplication. We undo that using division. So we'll divide by the same thing on both sides. Multiplication is always undone using division. So if I have x and I multiply it by anything, I can undo that by dividing by whatever it is that we're multiplying by. Okay, let's go back to here. We're taking x. It's right next to the parentheses. That means we're multiplying by all of the stuff in the parentheses. In order to undo that multiplication, I'm going to divide by the exact same thing we're multiplying by, which is 2 plus 6z. And I'm going to do it to the other side. Divide by 2 plus 6z. Now this is eliminated because we've undone that multiplication and we're finished. So we end up with x equals, and then over here, I cannot simplify that, so I just leave it as a divided by 2 plus 6z, and we're finished. That's as far as I can go with that one. Let's take a look at this one. Now the difference on this one that I wanted to highlight is that we have a term that does not have the variable. These both have an x in it, and this one does not. Please eliminate that first. So let's subtract this 8 to get it over onto the other side, and it'll make our lives easier. That gives us z minus 8 on the left side. On the right side, we're left with 6x plus px, and now these both have an x, and we can factor it out. So let's factor out that x. We get x times 6 left here in the first term, plus p left here in the second term. Over here we have z minus 8, and now we're ready for that division like we did before. So we're multiplying by 6 plus p. To undo that multiplication, we're going to divide by 6 plus p. Over on the other side, we divide by 6 plus p, and that leaves us with x equals z minus 8 divided by 6 plus p, which again we cannot finish calculating this, cannot simplify it any further, so we are finished. Thank you.